Because some people actually think that we are stupid
Right.
because we're so willing to just ask
Yeah.
and or just say something dumb, when
Yeah.
in reality the only goal is to learn.
Yeah.
And it's the student who's excited to be a student who ends up the master.
If you are just focused on waiting for the ball to drop out underneath and it's my ball because I believe that this is right, this is accurate, and that's my inherent belief, there's really no data that supports that that's objectively true. You're solely just going to focus on the me of the we. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to the one and only Conscious Couples podcast. This is where we help you flourish in your intimate relationship. Today, episode 149, does your partner always think they're right?
Mm-hmm. Always.
Is that you saying that? Is that you saying? No, we're joking. Okay, so before we jump into this episode, as always, we want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show. And we work with 65 podcasters now.
It's amazing.
On the coaching/production side, it is wild to think about. And if you include group coaching in that, my goodness. So thank you. If you are out there and you want to start, grow, scale, or monetize a podcast, reach out to us. We have been podcasting for 8 years now, and we've made many, many, many mistakes. We've also done many things right, and we will help you accelerate the learning process way freaking better than we did. As always, my love, ladies first, what is your intention for today's episode?
Well, considering the fact that I'm always right, my intention is to have this episode prove that.
Okay.
No, in all reality, you can either be right or in love, and more often than not, those two don't overlap.
I can be right and in love.
You and I can be, because we value truth. And
Yes.
so my intention for this episode for our listeners is to help them understand what tool they're not using yet and how to apply that so that they can be right and in love. And
I do want to make this clear. It is possible you are using this tool unconsciously.
Unlikely.
We're in a playful mood. Okay. So Emilia and I were on a walk the other evening, and I believe it was raining. And
it was like sleeting, downpouring rain. Alan's like downplaying it. It was like downpouring rain.
Yeah.
Sleet, snow, probably 21 degrees outside. It was freaking brutal.
Emilia and I lately on our walks, we've been putting our hoods up. So we're kind of yelling at each other in order to hear each other, because we basically have a bunch of stuff covering our ears. So our conversations are probably being heard by the entire neighborhood. But anyways, we were being playful and walking. We had a great time. But ultimately, she ended up saying something along the lines of, thank you so much for being able to take so much feedback. You've been able to take more feedback than any of my past partners. And this is, by the way, right after giving me some pretty hardcore feedback.
Yeah.
And I said, babe, let me give you the secret. She leaned in like that. And I said, I just want the truth. I just want accurate thinking. And you don't know this, sweetheart, but I'm going to tell this story. So I had someone that I had dated, gone on dates with 10 years ago. All right, sweetheart. All right, 10 years ago. And I was on a coaching session with a woman named Luam. And I was showing her Facebook communities and how important that is to grow your business and your podcast. And I saw in the upper right-hand corner this woman that I had gone on dates with 10 years ago had asked me to be her friend. And I accidentally hit confirm just because I was on the moment. Yeah. And I went into our conversation. And this was actually this morning. I couldn't sleep. And I went into her and I's conversation, and I saw a conversation. Now everyone imagine you 10 years ago and you reading it now. So at 26 years old, I had just broken up with my ex, Courtney, at the time, and I was talking to this girl, Carolyn.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't intimate or anything at that point, but it was just an initial conversation. And I, this morning, could not believe how ignorant I was in comparison to now. The reason I'm bringing this up is because at first I was embarrassed, and I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't understand women like I do now. 10 years ago, I was, different than I am now. The reason I bring that up is because first I got embarrassed. Second, I got pumped for what I'm going to be like at 46. Because if that's 26 to 36, at 46, I'm going to be even more aware. So that excited the hell out of me. But the reason I'm mentioning this is that when Emilia said you've been able to take so much feedback, therapy, you name it, the reason why is because, number one, I actually want to understand things at the deepest level. I actually want to improve. And I actually want to get better. And the truth is that I actually want the truth. Now, the only time I get offended when people give me feedback, maybe not the only time, but one of the only times, is when they're just wrong. They're inaccurate. And I'll give this really brief thing. I'll let you talk in a second, I promise.
No, I'm chilling.
So people in my past would say, oh, well, obviously the feedback I'm giving you is true. You're so offended. I'm offended because you're wrong. They think I'm triggered because a lot of people, when you say, hey, have you considered maybe you've been gaining some weight? They get really triggered. Like, oh, you think I've gained weight? Yes. You're triggered because it's true. They think I'm triggered because it's true. No, I'm triggered because you're wildly inaccurate about me. You don't actually know me. I feel unseen. So anyways, fast forward. Emilia and I realized, and she came up with this awesome metaphor. You're really good at these metaphors. I've used many of them, the truth dial, all these other things. You came up with this awesome metaphor for what we're doing in our relationship that I didn't even realize we were necessarily doing, but that makes a lot of sense as to why we've grown so much. Because if I were to look at me 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I've evolved and grown so much as a man to an alarming extent. Because if anyone wants to know how much you've grown, look at yourself messaging someone 10 years ago. I mean, it is not pretty. And it's not like I did anything bad. It was respectful, but that's not me. That's what an idiot, right? So anyways.
That was you back then. It's too funny because Bianca and I just got off the phone. We were recording a podcast episode, and long story short, there was someone from my past that also popped up that apparently has meandered their way into a mutual relationship that Bianca and I, or a person that she and I know. And if you only knew Emilia back then, it's like, oh yeah, I bet you would love to tell those stories because it's just been such a different person. And Bianca had asked me, she goes, how does that not bother you? And I said something along the lines of like, I would never want to be caged into an old version of myself because the fact is truth, and our version of the truth helps us to evolve. And that's been something that I've always really sought out when it comes to my evolution. So it's funny, you and I had a blast from the past in an interesting way because
at the same time,
I wonder. But I told her, I was like, I would never cage someone into an older version of themselves. Whoever I knew back in college or back in high school, like, I'm assuming that they've changed, maybe not for the better, but I'm not going to cage them into that person today because I know that I would never want that for myself. So why I bring that into the fold is because you and I, it's very clear in hindsight, we value truth, even if it doesn't feel good to receive.
So remember when you and I created an album, a shared album called The Burn Book?
Yeah.
And this was Emilia's idea. She has so many good growth ideas, seriously. And
So many good
essentially
growth
what
ideas.
this is take a picture that you're embarrassed by.
Embarrassed about.
Maybe a little bit of shame.
Maybe a little
We'll see.
shame, guilt.
Embarrassed, guilt, shame, whatever it is. No shame.
Nostalgia.
Embarrassed. Take a picture you're embarrassed by and put it in the burn book. And let's share it with each other so that we can get to know the past versions of each other. And that's been really fascinating. But I digress. There's a metaphor that you came up with that we are definitely doing for the last 5 years in our relationship that I think has helped tremendously, because I do know, and I can say this authentically at this point, when we do get into discords or debates, we are not trying to be right. We are trying to illuminate a better option. We're trying to learn.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to be right. We're trying to learn. And it's very, very obvious to me that in the past, that was not always the case.
Same.
So what's the
It's
metaphor?
been very actually triggering in our relationship when you and I actually go into, I'm stating an objective, measurable, observable fact, aka a truth, and you want to have a dialogue around that because so many of my past partners only thought that that truth was my perspective, that I was fighting for me being right and my perspective being right. And so they would also take the position of let me be right instead. And so it would be the combating, when in reality, it's like, I am not interested in having a confrontation over what you think is my truth.
Versus
this is
the
truth.
Yes.
And so it's still to this day a learning experience for me to be able to be like, oh, you actually care about the truth more than about being right. Every man that I've ever come into contact with cares about them being right because they can't handle their ego being wrong. And they value their ego over objective measurable truth. And so the analogy that I shared with you is like
that you created.
That I created. Okay, I'll take credit for it. I guess I'm right.
You're not taking credit for it. That is the truth.
That is the truth. Okay, so Alan and I were on this walk, and I was really reflecting because you and I have the behind the scenes of so many couples, and I see how many couples are held back because they literally are incapable of sharing the truth with their partner. And they're unable to grow at the speed, at the rate, the intensity, in the duration that they could if they just valued truth more than they valued being right. And so it's such an obvious thing that couples don't realize that they're doing, and that is likely conditioned into the habits of their relationship. And I said, babe, it's like you and I have a truth that we observe because you and I are like scientists. We have this, we'll use Tucker, for example. Okay. Tucker pooped on the carpet. We use this analogy all the time. This is an objective, realistic experience that happens.
Bush Tucker
Wolf. Okay.
Which I just found out the origin of Bush Tucker Wolf from the bush in New Zealand.
Yes.
Which is very cute.
Yes. So
and somewhat alarming.
So there's
only one Bush Tucker.
Here's an example. Our Bush Tucker Wolf, which is our 6 pound, 8 pound, maybe 10 pound Chihuahua, takes a dump on our carpet. Right?
Pomeranian Chihuahua, to be exact.
A little Pomchi takes a dump on the carpet. In walking to the bathroom, I observe there is a dump on the carpet. Alan hasn't seen the dump on the carpet, but yet he's going about his day. I come into, let's say, his office, and I say, I think Tucker took a pretty big dump on the carpet. That's me sharing a truth, not my perspective. And if Alan hasn't seen the observable truth, he could potentially have an opinion about it and want to put his opinion ball into what's called the truth chamber, which is what exists between you and I.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you.
Go.
All right. So when you play the lottery, Emilia and I don't play the lottery, so this is just a metaphor. But ultimately,
imagine a funnel.
I think a lot of people have seen this on TV, so I'm just going to share
like a lottery ball?
Yes,
whatever
100%.
that is.
Okay, so imagine you play the lottery and you pick 11, 12, 15, 17. You pick the lottery numbers. What they do is they put the balls of the numbers in this giant chamber and they spin it up. Apparently now they do it with air. We looked this up. We don't know. I haven't played the lottery. I haven't played the lottery my entire life.
Yeah.
But I've seen this happen where they used to mix it up.
Yeah.
And all these balls with all these numbers, and then and Emilia said the truth ball pops out.
Yeah.
What Emilia was trying to illuminate in this metaphor, which I thought was really powerful, was we're putting in data that we believe is accurate.
And we've observed.
And then that we've observed. And as our scientists, and yes, we're weird. And then we're mixing it up with our conversation, and then we want the truth ball to come out.
Yeah.
And there was this one time where we had Tucker data on the whiteboard, which was essentially how many times I've taken Tucker out and how many times she's taken Tucker out. And she was under the impression that she was taking Tucker out more than me. And I've been Mr. Dad Man, Bush Tucker Wolf. She was right. So we went back to our photographs of the whiteboard and you were accurate.
Yeah.
And I wasn't upset with you.
Right.
Because you're accurate.
Right.
I'm not upset that it's not about whether Emilia took him out more or I took him out more. It's about what's accurate.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's about what's accurate, to bring this to why this all matters, is because you can't make good decisions based on inaccurate data. So if Emilia and I are in our Tesla that drives itself and it thinks there's a road to the right, but it's actually a cliff, it's going to keep driving us off a cliff because it has inaccurate data of the terrain. And so in life, if you are in a relationship where you aren't trying to find the truth ball, the person's just trying to find the my ball, my right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, you're basically never going to update your GPS. And a GPS without accurate data can't get you anywhere. And that's a really good metaphor stacked on another metaphor.
Lots of metaphors here.
Hi, Amy and Chris Lennius here to give a quick moment of appreciation for Alan and Emilia. We have been working with them for a few months now, maybe 6, maybe going on 6 months now, and we appreciate you guys so much. To see you guys work as a team, to help couples work as a team is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. Not only have you helped us reconnect and helped us with our marriage, you've also helped us through big life moments, with boundaries, with creating our own stable unit at home. We appreciate you guys so, so much.
Yes, truly heartfelt appreciate you guys and everything you've done for us.
Thanks, guys. We love you.
And, what is the value to couples when they actually can have words or a metaphor and use the truth chamber and imagine that funnel or imagine that lottery where ultimately what comes out is the truth and you can make good decisions from that. The value continues to bring back value to you as a relationship because of the fact that you guys can grow together, not apart. If you are just focused on waiting for the ball to drop out underneath and it's my ball because I believe that this is right, this is accurate, and that's my inherent belief, there's really no data that supports that that's objectively true. You're solely just going to focus on the me of the we. And when the me just gets focused in on the we, you actually aren't growing together. You're actually growing apart. And in real time, you two are going to continuously have conflicts, have confrontations, avoid them, and have these really unhealthy coping mechanisms come into your relationship that further have you growing apart.
So as an example, let's say, again, metaphorically, hypothetically, I think 2 + 2 is 3, and Emilia thinks 2 + 2 is 5. The truth is 2 + 2 is 4. Are we working as a team to say, hey, from my perspective, love, it seems like 2 + 2 is 3. What does it seem like from your perspective? And you say, well, for me, it seems like 2 + 2 is 5. And then we benchmark them against each other and go, oh, so 2 + 2 is actually 4. We're both idiots.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
You need to have humility in your relationship. You have to have
humility. My goal is not to be right. My goal is to get smarter.
Yeah.
The only way to get smarter, by the way, is to be wrong.
Yes.
You've never met a human being more excited to be wrong because that means that I now get to be smarter.
You get to learn something.
And ironically, the people that are fighting to be right, they're the ones who are afraid to ask a dumb question. They're the ones that are afraid to look dumb. So inevitably, if you're afraid to look dumb in the moment, you won't learn. Therefore, you'll end up dumb in the long term, which makes you what? More insecure. And so unfortunately, sometimes you have to be more focused on getting better and learning than on looking good. I'd rather look dumb for a moment than be dumb for a lifetime. And if you're in a relationship with someone who's very insecure unconsciously about their intelligence and they're constantly trying to be right, you know it.
Yeah.
We're triggering you already by this conversation. And you really can't evolve and grow together without that. And one last piece here. A lot of people say, oh, well, agree to disagree. That might be true for an acquaintance. Emilia and I live together. If we agree to disagree, I'm going to have my toothpaste all over the whatever, and she's going to have her bath mat. Like, there are certain things we have to find a happy medium. We have to integrate. And if Emilia and I disagree about the temperature of this household, I want it on 72 and she wants it on 68, we better find a better solution and agree to agree, not agree to disagree. Otherwise, half the time she's going to be freezing and half the time I'm going to be sweating, or vice versa. And that's just not a good way to coexist. And so the better way to coexist is to find that happy medium, that integration of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Emilia and I are more together than we are apart. Why? Because we sharpen each other's minds through these intellectual conversations, and then we're sharing those with all of you out there watching or listening. And so if you're out there and you know you're with a partner, and I have been in the past, I had a partner once said, you think you're always right. I said, no, I don't. I just think I'm more right than you. And the truth is I am. In this case, I was
Yeah.
objective truth.
Right.
And so a lot of people live in a very subjective world and they're not trying to pursue objective truth. I don't care what your opinion is. Gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared, regardless of your perspective. And you can measure that. And so hopefully you're kind along the way, but ultimately, hopefully you're actually having healthy discords where you can come to a better conclusion where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, there's something that Bianca and I posted on Evolve's Instagram page this past week that was emotional reasoning, which is something that so many people use, to your point, which is because I feel like it's right, I'm going to apply reason to make it actually, quote unquote, right in my world, which is such a hallmark.
Also called rationalization.
Yeah, well, it's whatever I emotionally feel, I'm going to rationalize why that feeling is, quote unquote, true for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that element, it is a hallmark. She and I were talking about orange flags around emotional immaturity. This being right and having to be right over really valuing the truth is a hallmark of emotional immaturity. So if this is in your relationship or you've seen it crop up and you're like whack-a-mole just trying to overcome it and it's a struggle bus for you, chances are, if you aren't able to correct this or at least illuminate this through this podcast episode or through relationship talks coaching, it is going to be something that will drive you absolutely batshit crazy, for lack of better words, if you're someone who does value truth and if you're someone who does value growth. And likely, if you're listening to this podcast episode, you are the growth-oriented person in your relationship. So do not let this one little sneaky small thing drive you two apart. Let it be the thing that drives you two together.
And back to what I opened this episode with, me 10 years ago, it is alarming. And by the way, I want to put this in context. As a 26-year-old man, I was already educated and affluent. I had a bachelor's of science in computer engineering. I had a master's in business. I was already a pretty educated, affluent, intelligent man, respectful, all those things. Compared to me now, I was ignorant as hell. But this is the duality we all have to hold. Compared to what there is to know in the universe, I know nothing. Compared to what I knew at 26, I know kind of everything in a way. Almost everything. It's way more. But that's only because I was willing to constantly have these conversations and then go, oh, all right. And so the very last piece here is...
I have something to add on that before we
go
go.
ahead.
I was just going to say, you and I have learned that you and I actually look like idiots sometimes around people, and they think that we're idiots because we're like so eager to learn the truth. And we're okay with taking that short-term credibility hit for the long-term lesson and awareness and more data. And that's been something that you and I have bonded over to this topic. And you said a beautiful soundbite that I cannot wait to hear on. It's like, are you more concerned about looking dumb right now, or are you more concerned about being dumb forever? Right? Like, you and I do not care about looking dumb right now.
No, to a detriment.
Yeah.
To a detriment. Because some people actually think that we are stupid because we're so willing to just ask and or just say something dumb, when in reality the only goal is to learn.
Yeah.
And it's the student who's excited to be a student who ends up the master. The problem is the person who's trying to act or look like a master and can never be a student is never going to actually learn, and that's a whole conundrum. So I remember I said this to Kev early on. Kevin is my business partner, for those of you who are new listeners, and we started working together 8 years ago. And I said, Kev, I'm never fully right, but I'm definitely not fully wrong. Yeah. And by the way, I'm more right than you most of the time. Like, I was being playful with it. Yeah. But the truth is, I just am more aware than he is in most things. And luckily, he's secure enough now to not only admit that, but actually say it publicly. So now I can, which is freaking great. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the goal is to learn and the goal is to grow. And if that's the case, you already have a flourishing relationship. Yeah. If that's not the goal, and the unconscious goal is fixed mindset, look good rather than get better, you are stuck. And that's what we're here for. Reach out and we can talk to you solo. We can talk to you and your partner. Those relationship talks coaching sessions are about seeking truth, uncovering the real reasons why you two are not communicating well, not trusting each other, not growing together, not apart.
Yeah. I have a couple that just came in mind that I just got off the phone with the female in the relationship. And although they're taking it day by day, I'm just really proud of them, because this could have easily been something that had cropped up in their relationship that they could have easily turned a blind eye to. And as a matter of fact, for a long time in their relationship, they did. And now they're not. And they took a chance on us. They did RTC, and now the way in which they're flourishing day by day in that relationship, just individually and in the collective, is quite beautiful. So I'm so grateful for the work that we do and grateful for our listeners, because what we actually talk about is not the BS that so many people want to just hear, so we're grateful for each and every single one of you listeners. So in the show notes, we are inviting you to our last of the year relationship talks event. We're still going to be doing them, but this is the last one in 2024. It is how to align you and your partner's goals in 2025. So imagine you have goals and your partner has goals, and you two try to map it out individually. How much is that going to conflict when you guys are not on the same page? Here's the thing. If you and your partner were on the same page about your goals and you actually align them, then you would have the same map. You would approach the map a little bit differently and maybe in parallel, but that would help you and your relationship so deeply flourish and grow together, not apart. That is going to be on December 19th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we hope to see you there.
Tiny example, Emilia and I, we are already talking about 2025, Emilia more than me, but love it. And we were mapping out the next year and getting clear and what do we want to accomplish, what do we want to delete, all this stuff. And Emilia said something along the lines of, I would really love it if we could go to the gym in the morning instead of the evening. And this is just something that's come up many times. And you're like, well, we can go to the gym different times. And I'm like, sweetheart, we live together.
We share.
We share a life. We share the Tesla. We are 10 times better together than we are apart. In what planet are you and I not going to sync up schedules? So my point to that whole story is you and your partner being on the same team, on the same page, toward the same goals that are not in conflict. If Emilia wanted to go to the gym in the morning and I wanted to go at night, we could make it work.
1,000%. But
it's so much harder, and those are kind of goals in conflict a little bit, approaches in conflict. So in 2025, do it different. Align each other's schedules, align each other's goals, align each other's core values. And if you do have things you have to do separately, of course do that too. But if you can do it together, you're going to accomplish far more. And I think it's a little bit unrealistic to think that you and your partner can be completely different and still achieve all your goals and dreams. Like, I think that that's absolute delusion. And I used to think that I could with all my friends in the past. And in hindsight, I had to lose most of them in order to achieve what I'm achieving.
Some power and overlap for sure.
Yep. Anything you want to end with before we go? Okay. As always, again, the point of this podcast is to help you flourish together in your intimate relationship. We hope that you have done that. We're coming up on episode 150, so thank you all for long-term listeners for sticking with us. And as always, it's not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is A_Lazarus88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.